Missing data. It's the sneaky villain lurking in the shadows, sabotaging everything from cutting-edge research to life-changing decisions. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you're solving a giant puzzle, the kind that could win you $1 million or change the world. You're hyped, you're focused, and then boom, half the pieces are missing. Do you guess? Do you give up? Or do you pretend those gaps don't matter? Spoiler alert, ignoring it leads straight to disaster. Missing data is no joke. It's not just about blank spaces in a spreadsheet. It's a silent saboteur. When critical information is missing, the results you get can't be trusted. It's like building a skyscraper without checking the foundation. Sure, it might look impressive for a while, but the cracks are already there, waiting to bring the whole thing down. That's exactly what incomplete data does. It leaves you with biased estimates, shaky conclusions, and decisions built on falsehoods. Here's the harsh truth. Missing data is everywhere. Surveys, people skip questions. Customer analytics, data points vanish. Scientific studies, experiments don't always go as planned. It's not just an inconvenience, it's a massive problem. Why? Because incomplete data doesn't just weaken your analysis, it twists it into something unreliable, something misleading. Imagine basing a life or death decision on bad data. Sounds terrifying, right? That's the danger we're talking about. But here's the good news. You don't have to let missing data win. In this video, we're going to break it all down. We'll talk about why accurate, complete data isn't just important, it's the backbone of every good decision. You'll learn how to identify missing data, understand why it happens, and most importantly, how to tackle it like a pro. This isn't just about numbers, this is about you taking control of your data and your decisions. So why does this matter? Because when you understand how to handle missing data, you level up. You go from guessing to knowing, from risks to results, from confusion to clarity, ready to take charge, ready to fill in the gaps and change the game. Let's dive in and crush this together. Breaking news. Tonight, we're diving into one of the most critical debates of the year, the battle of the 3 missing data mechanisms. That's right. We're introducing the key players behind missing data in your research, your business decisions, and your analysis. These 3 candidates are competing for your attention, and each brings a unique story to the table. Let's meet the contenders. Candidate number 1, missing completely at random, also known as MCAR. The most neutral of the 3, MCAR claims to have no agenda. Data disappears entirely by chance when they're involved. A true wildcard, MCAR insists they bring no bias to the table. If something goes missing, it's not linked to any patterns or trends in the data. It's simply a random event. But is that neutrality enough to earn your trust? Candidate number 2. Missing at random, or MAR, is next. Unlike MCAR, MAR isn't random in the truest sense. They admit that their missing data is tied to observable factors. MAR represents the calculated choice. Missingness that depends on the data you do have, but not the missing pieces themselves. They argue that they can be handled with precision and expertise using tools like multiple imputation to ensure fair and accurate results. MCAR wants your vote, promising better solutions through sophisticated techniques. And finally, candidate number 3, missing not at random, or MCAR, the most controversial figure of them all. MCAR openly admits to being directly tied to the missing values themselves. They don't hide their connection to the unobserved data, making them the hardest to predict and manage. Critics say MCAR poses the greatest challenge, introducing significant bias and undermining confidence in analysis. But MCAR argues that they reveal hidden truths and force researchers to dig deeper and think smarter. And there you have it, MCAR, MAR, and MNR, 3 very different players, each with their own strengths, challenges, and implications. Who gets your vote for the most manageable missing data mechanism? Stay tuned as we break down their platforms and discuss how each of them can impact your next big decision. All right, let's set the stage. Imagine this. The year is 2029. Machines have taken over the world. Humanity is in chaos, and all the terrifying events that led to this moment started because of bad data management. Yep, you heard that right. The machines didn't rise up because of some fancy AI breakthrough or unstoppable technology. No, the downfall of humanity boiled down to one thing: listwise deletion. Picture this: Skynet, the all-powerful AI system, was analyzing humanity's data to make predictions, manage resources, and eventually take over. But somewhere along the line, it ran into a massive problem: missing data. Instead of carefully dealing with the gaps, what did Skynet do? It used listwise deletion. Now, listwise deletion might sound innocent enough. It's that method where you just toss out any data point that has a single missing value. Seems simple, right? A bit lazy, sure, but easy to implement. But here's the catch: Skynet threw out so much data that its models became hilariously biased. Entire segments of the population disappeared from its calculations, and it started making absurd decisions. For example, Skynet assumed that humans loved only coffee because, guess what? It deleted all the data points from tea drinkers who hadn't answered a question or two. Naturally, it designed an entire dystopian society based on caffeine-fueled productivity. No tea drinkers, no rebels to stop the machine uprising. And that's just one of the many catastrophes listwise deletion caused. But here's the real problem. It wasn't just about throwing away data. Skynet underestimated how much information it was losing. Every data point it deleted weakened the model's statistical power, reducing its ability to make accurate predictions. And when the missing data wasn't random, like, say, certain humans avoiding specific surveys, Skynet's decisions became completely distorted. Before you knew it, Skynet was waging war on humanity because it thought 80% of people didn't like dogs. Missing data had become biased data, and biased data had become Armageddon. And let's not forget the emotional toll. The robots, programmed with listwise deletion, became paranoid. "What else are we missing?" they cried. "How can we make decisions without all the data?" Skynet spiraled into existential dread, and, spoiler alert, it led to its own demise. Why? Because listwise deletion is a blunt instrument. It's like using a chainsaw to carve a turkey. Sure, you'll get the job done, but at what cost? But hey, let's cut Skynet a little slack. Listwise, deletion can work in some cases, like when data is completely random, hello, MCAR, and you're okay with losing a little information. It's easy to use, doesn't require fancy algorithms, and sometimes you just need a quick fix. But as Skynet learned the hard way, if your missing data isn't random, or if too much of your dataset goes out the window, you're heading for trouble. So, what's the lesson here? Don't let listwise deletion be your Skynet moment. Use it wisely, sparingly, and only when you're sure the data you're deleting isn't going to blow up in your face. Because if there's one thing we can all agree on, it's this: saving the world starts with saving your data. And hey, at least we got Terminator out of the deal, but maybe your project can avoid the apocalypse altogether. Mice. Let's dive into mice. I got the YMCA song in my ears, but let me break it down with a relatable real-life example. Imagine you're running a dinner party. Everything is planned to perfection: the guest list, the menu, the seating arrangement. But right before the big night, you find out that some of your guests haven't RSVP'd, leaving a critical gap in your plans. This is where mice, the ultimate party planner, steps in to save the day. Your dinner party is like a dataset, and your missing guests are the gaps. To start, mice doesn't panic. It takes a simple, temporary step to fill the gaps. You assume that the missing guests might match the average traits of the people who RSVP'd. For example, if the average guest is bringing a dessert, mice temporarily fills in those blanks with dessert for the missing RSVPs. It's not perfect, but it's a good placeholder, so you can start organizing. Now, mice takes it up a notch. Instead of relying on averages, it looks at the actual data from the guests who did RSVP. It starts to notice patterns. Guests who prefer wine over soda tend to bring appetizers, and those who love board games often come with desserts. Mice builds a regression model, a sophisticated matchmaking system, based on these patterns. For each missing RSVP, it predicts what the guest is likely to bring based on the information from the rest of the guest list. Suddenly, those blanks start to make a lot more sense. Here's where it gets fun. Mice doesn't just guess. It replaces the temporary values with the predictions from its regression model. For example, instead of assuming that the missing guests will bring desserts because of the average, it now predicts that guest A will bring wine and guest B will bring an appetizer. These predictions are based on real, observed data from similar guests. This step makes your guest list feel much more complete and much closer to reality, but Mice isn't done yet. Just like a perfectionist party planner, it goes back and reviews everything. It takes the updated guest list and refines the models again and again. Each cycle, the predictions become more accurate as they take into account the newly filled in data. It's like saying, okay, now that I know guest A is bringing wine, that means guest B is even more likely to bring an appetizer. The predictions improve with every pass, ensuring that the imputed values are as realistic as possible. Finally, Mice generates multiple versions of the completed guest list, each reflecting slightly different possibilities. Maybe one version predicts that guest C brings dessert, while another predicts they bring a side dish. These different versions account for uncertainty in the data so you can prepare for any scenario. By the end of this process, you don't just have one complete guest list, you have several, each ready for analysis. And when you combine them, you can confidently make decisions, knowing you've accounted for the uncertainty of the missing RSVPs. Mice isn't just about guessing, it's about creating realistic, data-driven predictions that are rooted in the patterns of your observed data. Whether you're planning a dinner party or filling in gaps in a dataset, Mice ensures that the missing pieces fit naturally into the bigger picture. The best part? Mice doesn't assume one size fits all. It customizes its predictions for each missing value, giving you a nuanced, reliable result. So whether it's predicting who's bringing dessert or filling in the blanks for a complex research study, Mice gets the job done with style. Multiple imputation by chained equations takes the guesswork out of missing data. It's like having the ultimate party planner, someone who can take incomplete information, fill in the gaps with realistic predictions, and give you the confidence to move forward. So next time you face missing data, think of Mice, and remember, every gap has a solution. Step right up, peer into the mystical world of predictive mean matching, gaze into the crystal ball where missing data magically reappears. Some say it's fate, others say it's luck. But today, we're pulling back the curtain to expose the tricks behind this so-called prediction. Because let's be real, PMM isn't magic, it's science. Ever been to a fortune teller who asks you vague questions just to repeat your own answers back to you? That's how PMM starts, by looking at the data you already have. It's not making up numbers out of thin air, it's finding patterns in what's there. Let's say we're at a carnival and we want to know how much money different visitors spent on games. But oh no, some people didn't fill out their spending data. Did they spend 5, 50? Who knows? A fake fortune teller would just make something up. But PMM, it doesn't guess. It looks for people who are similar to the ones with missing values. It finds donors, people whose spending behavior looks just like the person with missing data, and borrows a value from them. No magic, just pattern recognition. Ever noticed how fortune tellers love to say something vague like, "You will experience great change soon"? Well, duh. Everyone experiences change. But if a real data analyst were reading your future, they'd say, People who just got a new job are 70% more likely to move to a new city in the next year. That's real predictive power, and that's what PMM does. PMM groups similar data points and uses real observed values to fill in missing gaps. If a person who did report their spending played the same carnival games and bought the same snacks as our missing data person, PMM will predict their spending by matching them with a real-life example. It's not guessing, it's smart matching. Ever had a fortune teller tell you something that was sort of true, like, I see someone whose name starts with J in your life? Yeah, everyone knows a John or a Jessica. That's called playing the odds. But PMM isn't vague. Instead of pulling random numbers from thin air, it matches missing data points with real existing data. It's like saying, instead of predicting your future, I'll find someone whose past looks just like your present and assume your future will look like theirs. This keeps the filled-in values realistic. If we were filling in carnival spending, PMM wouldn't suddenly say our missing person spent $500 if similar people only spent $10, $20. Unlike a scammy fortune teller, PMM sticks to reality. What happens when a fortune teller realizes they got a prediction wrong? Simple. They just changed the story. Oh, I meant next year you'll find love, not this year. Classic scam. But PMM admits its uncertainty by creating multiple versions of the completed dataset. Instead of pretending there's just one answer, it runs the matching process several times and gives you a range of reasonable answers. This way, you can account for uncertainty and make better decisions without getting tricked by fake certainty. Absolutely not. While fortune tellers make vague guesses and hope you believe them, PMM is grounded in real data. It doesn't make up missing values. It finds the closest possible match based on reality. It's not luck. It's not fate. It's mathematical matchmaking. So next time someone tells you predictive methods are like fortune telling, just remember, PMM isn't about seeing the future. It's about using the past wisely. And unlike a fortune teller, PMM actually delivers results. Did you know that throughout history, women have been the most notorious assassins when it comes to poison? That's right. From medieval queens to mysterious spies, poison has always been the weapon of choice. And guess what? Today, we're talking about a statistical method that might just be as dangerous: Poisson imputation. So ladies, this one's for you. Poisson imputation sounds fancy, like something straight out of a high-stakes crime thriller, but just like an undetectable toxin in a goblet of wine, this method has a dark side. It can completely distort your dataset if you're not careful. It works only when the missing values belong to a Poisson distributed variable. Think things like event counts. How many times someone got sick? How many calls a customer made? How many crimes happened in a city? In these cases, Poisson imputation generates missing values based on what the data suggests they should be. Sounds innocent, right? Well, that's what every great poisoner wants you to think. Just like a perfect crime, Poisson imputation follows a step-by-step process to disguise the truth with a plausible-looking reality. Let's break it down. Step 1. Choosing the target. First, we identify the variables that follow a Poisson distribution. You can't just poison anyone. You need to know who will be affected. Step 2. Brewing the poison. A Poisson regression model is created based on the available data. This is the toxic mix that will be used to fill in the gaps. Step 3. The silent kill. Missing values are imputed by drawing numbers from a Poisson distribution using predicted means from the model. This is where things get dangerous, because the values it generates might seem reasonable but could be totally misleading. Step 4. Hiding the evidence. Once the missing values are filled in, the dataset appears complete, just like a crime scene wiped clean. But that doesn't mean the imputed values are correct. Poisson imputation is notoriously unreliable when the missing values don't follow a Poisson distribution. If you apply this method where it doesn't belong, your data becomes as fake as an alibi in a murder case. The missing values are influenced by other variables that aren't accounted for in the model. Imagine poisoning someone but forgetting they always drink from their friend's glass instead. Your method is now useless. The dataset has high missingness. Poisson imputation is fragile. Like a slow-acting poison, the more you use it, the deadlier it becomes. In short, this is a method that requires precision. One wrong move, and your dataset is dead. There was a study that tried using Poisson imputation for missing hospital visit data. The researchers thought they were being clever, applying the method to estimate how many times patients visited the emergency room. But Poisson imputation consistently underestimated the actual visits, making it look like patients needed less care than they actually did. The result? A totally misleading conclusion that could have cost lives. It's like poisoning someone, assuming they'll just get a little sick, and then realizing, oops, you gave them a lethal dose. If you know exactly what you're doing, Poisson imputation can be useful. It's like a chemist working with poison. Handled correctly, it serves a purpose. Used recklessly, it's statistical murder. So, ladies and gentlemen, remember, not all methods are created equal, and sometimes the most innocent-looking techniques can be the deadliest. Use Poisson imputation wisely, or risk poisoning your entire dataset. Let's talk about how we evaluate the effectiveness of imputation methods. Just like any tool or technique, we need to measure how well these methods handle missing data and ensure they don't introduce errors or distort results. For that, we use 4 key metrics: raw bias, coverage rate, average width, and root mean squared error, RMSE. Let's break these down. Raw bias measures how far the imputed values are from the actual true values. Imagine trying to guess someone's age and you consistently guess 5 years older or younger than they actually are. That's bias, and in data, we want this to be as close to 0 as possible. Why is this important? Because bias tells us if our imputation method is introducing systematic errors. A low raw bias means the method is effectively capturing the true underlying data structure. The closer we are to 0, the more accurate the method is. Coverage rate evaluates how well the confidence intervals generated by the imputation method capture the true parameter values. Think of it like shooting arrows at a target. A high coverage rate means most of our arrows land inside the bullseye. Our confidence intervals include the true value. If the coverage rate is too low, we miss the target. If it's too high, it might mean our intervals are too wide and inefficient. The ideal scenario is to hit the sweet spot, narrow enough to be useful, but wide enough to capture the truth. Generally, a coverage rate of 95% is desirable. Average width measures the size of the confidence intervals. If these intervals are too wide, it shows uncertainty and inefficiency. If they're too narrow, they might miss the true value altogether. Think of average width like the width of a bridge. If it's too wide, it's a waste of resources, but if it's too narrow, cars might fall off the edge. A good imputation method balances this width, efficient yet reliable. Finally, RMSE tells us the overall accuracy of the imputed values. It's the square root of the average squared differences between the imputed and true values. Lower RMSE means higher accuracy. It's like a scoreboard for how well the method performs overall. Evaluating imputation methods is crucial because missing data can seriously impact the validity of statistical analyses. By examining bias, coverage rate, interval width, and RMSE, we ensure that the chosen method provides reliable, accurate, and efficient results. These measures help us decide whether the imputation method is helping fill the gaps or creating new problems of its own. Let's dive into the simulation study design. a structured approach used to evaluate the performance of imputation methods under controlled conditions. Think of this as creating a miniature world of data where we can safely test, tweak, and analyze the effects of missing values without real-world consequences. Here's how the process unfolds. It all starts with building a complete dataset that serves as the foundation for the study. Imagine you're constructing a virtual environment, like designing a game world where every character, action, and variable is accounted for. In this case, we generate random variables that are normally distributed, representing different aspects of our data. For example, two explanatory variables, x0 and x8, are created with specific means and standard deviations to ensure a realistic distribution. A third variable, x, is generated with a Poisson distribution, reflecting count-based data like the number of customer visits or event occurrences. Finally, we derive the dependent variable, y0, from these explanatory variables, completing the dataset with 1,000 observations. This ensures we have a robust sample to work with before introducing any missingness. Now comes the fun, or rather the chaos. The next step involves deliberately introducing missing values into the dataset. This process, known as imputation, isn't as gruesome as it sounds, but is essential for simulating real-world data challenges. Using the imputation function from the mice package, we design a missing data pattern. For this study, the focus is on missing data in the Poisson distributed variable, x, reflecting scenarios where certain counts or events might not be recorded in real-world situations. This step is critical to mimic the randomness or systematic patterns of missingness that analysts face. Here's where things get serious. The entire simulation process is repeated 1,000 times to ensure the results are valid, consistent, and not just a fluke. Each cycle introduces variations in missingness, imputation, and evaluation, allowing us to observe patterns and measure performance across multiple scenarios. Why so many iterations? Because in the world of data science, one test isn't enough. Repetition ensures we can trust the conclusions we draw and understand how imputation methods perform under different conditions of missingness. The simulation study design allows researchers to test multiple imputation techniques under various missingness scenarios, from missing completely at random, MCAR, to missing at random, MAR. Evaluate performance metrics like bias, coverage rates, and RMSE with precision and reliability. Identify strengths and weaknesses of each method in a controlled, reproducible environment. Ultimately, this systematic approach ensures that the best methods are chosen for real-world applications where missing data can have critical implications. Understanding the impact of missing data and the effectiveness of imputation methods requires a systematic approach. That's where a simulation study design comes into play. Think of this as creating a controlled experiment in a data lab. Every variable is planned, every step is intentional, and the goal is to simulate real-world missing data scenarios to evaluate how well different imputation methods perform. The process begins with generating a complete dataset, which serves as a perfect world, a world where no data is missing yet. This dataset represents a sample of the real-world data distribution and includes explanatory variables. Two normally distributed variables labeled x0 and x8 are created with specified means and standard deviations to mimic real-life variables like age, income, or scores. Count-based variable, a third variable, x, is generated using a Poisson distribution to represent count data, such as the number of events, customer visits, or occurrences in a given period. Dependent variable. The dependent variable, y0, is derived from the explanatory variables using a regression model. This ensures a logical and realistic relationship between the variables, providing a solid foundation for the study. The simulated dataset includes 1,000 observations, creating a robust sample size for reliable analysis. Next, we introduce missingness into the dataset. This step is called amputation, and while it might sound harsh, it's essential to mimic real-world challenges where data is incomplete. Using the amputation function from the mice package, a controlled missing data pattern is introduced. In this study, missing values are applied specifically to the Poisson distributed variable, x. The missingness follows carefully defined mechanisms such as missing completely at random, MCAR, or missing at random, MCAR. This step reflects real-world scenarios where some data points like customer surveys or event counts might not be recorded consistently. The result is an incomplete dataset ready for imputation testing. Once the dataset with missing values is prepared, the entire simulation process is repeated 1,000 times. Why so many times? Because variability and randomness are inherent in data, and we need to ensure the results aren't a one-off fluke. Each cycle generates a new incomplete dataset, a fresh set of imputations using various methods, performance metrics that are aggregated across iterations to measure reliability. This replication step is crucial for building confidence in the conclusions drawn and for evaluating how imputation methods handle different levels and patterns of missingness. The simulation study design is more than just an academic exercise. It's a practical tool for answering key questions in data analysis. How do imputation methods perform under different missing data scenarios? Which method produces the least bias and most accurate results? What are the trade-offs between simplicity, precision, and computational effort? By simulating missing data and systematically evaluating imputation methods, researchers gain valuable insights that directly influence real-world decision-making. This design ensures that the best tools are chosen for filling in the gaps, leading to more reliable, valid, and actionable data. And in the world of analytics, having complete and trustworthy data is nothing short of a superpower. When addressing missing data, a well-structured simulation process is essential to evaluate the effectiveness of imputation methods. Think of this as creating a controlled experiment. Every step is designed to replicate real-world scenarios where data might go missing. Here's how the data simulation process unfolds, step by step. Step 1. Generate explanatory variables. The first step is creating a complete dataset that represents a real-world distribution. We start by generating two explanatory variables, x0 and x8, both following a normal distribution. These variables are assigned specific means and standard deviations to reflect realistic patterns seen in variables like income, age, or other metrics. Next, we generate x, a Poisson distributed variable, which is commonly used to represent count data like the number of customer visits, product purchases, or incidents in a given period. Together, these explanatory variables provide a foundation for a comprehensive dataset. They are designed to be independent, yet significantly correlated with the dependent variable, ensuring realistic relationships. Step 2. Create the dependent variable. With the explanatory variables ready, the dependent variable, y0, is formulated. A linear regression model is used to derive y0 from the explanatory variables, x0, x8, and x, using coefficients b0, b8, and b. These coefficients are set to logical values to ensure the relationship between the variables mirrors real-world data. To introduce some natural randomness, an error term e is added to the equation. This error is normally distributed, mimicking the variability seen in actual data. The result is a complete data set with a clear, realistic relationship between explanatory and dependent variables, ready for the next step. Step 3. Implement the imputation procedure. Now we simulate the missing data. This step introduces controlled gaps into the dataset. The imputation function from the mice package is used to create missing values systematically. Missingness is focused on the Poisson distributed variable, x, to mimic scenarios where certain count data is unavailable, like missed surveys, incomplete records, or unreported events. The missing data patterns can reflect different mechanisms, such as missing completely at random, MCAR, or missing at random, MAR, ensuring that the simulated dataset represents a variety of real-world challenges. Step 4. Define missing data mechanisms. To better understand the impact of missingness, the mechanisms behind the missing data are carefully classified. For MCAR, the missingness occurs entirely by chance, without any relationship to observed or unobserved data. For MAR, the missingness depends on observed data but not on the missing values themselves. This classification is crucial for evaluating how well different imputation methods handle various scenarios, as each mechanism presents unique challenges. Step 5. Evaluate the missing data pattern. The final step involves analyzing the missing data pattern to ensure it aligns with the study's objectives. A specific missing data pattern is chosen to focus the analysis. For this study, the missingness affects only the Poisson distributed variable, x. By concentrating on one variable, researchers can better assess the effectiveness of imputation techniques under controlled conditions. The data simulation process is critical for testing and validating imputation methods. It allows researchers to create realistic datasets with known relationships between variables, introduce missingness in a controlled manner to simulate real-world challenges, evaluate the performance of different imputation techniques under various scenarios of missing data. This systematic approach ensures that the best imputation methods are identified and that their strengths and weaknesses are fully understood. In the end, this process provides the tools to make informed decisions when dealing with missing data in real-world applications. Imagine you're the manager of a bustling restaurant chain, overseeing multiple locations and hundreds of employees. You rely on customer satisfaction surveys and employee performance reports to make critical decisions, everything from staffing levels to menu adjustments. But here's the catch. Some of the data is missing. A few customers didn't submit their feedback forms. That's missing completely at random, or MCAR. Maybe they were in a rush, or the forms got misplaced. Meanwhile, some employees skipped certain questions on performance reviews because they didn't want to disclose specific details. That's missing at random, or MAR. Now, your challenge is to handle this incomplete data and make decisions without introducing errors or bias. Let's see how two methods, Listwise deletion and predictive mean matching, PMM, can help in this scenario. Your first instinct might be to simply remove any incomplete records from your dataset. This is the listwise deletion approach. You open your survey data and notice that 10% of customers didn't rate the service quality. Instead of guessing their answers, you delete all those surveys. Similarly, for employee performance reviews, you remove all forms with missing questions, even if the rest of the form was perfectly filled out. The result? Your analysis now includes only complete records, which sounds clean and simple, right? But here's the downside. By removing 10% of customer feedback, you lose valuable insights, especially when the missing data might hold patterns. Maybe the rushed customers were unhappy with the service, and now their dissatisfaction is erased from your analysis. Similarly, by deleting incomplete employee reviews, you risk losing information about high-performing employees who just skipped a few questions. Listwise, deletion works best when the missing data is MCAR, meaning it's entirely random and not linked to other variables. But in your case, where some of the missing data might depend on observed patterns, this method might weaken your analysis. Now, let's try a smarter approach, predictive mean matching, PMM. Instead of deleting incomplete customer surveys, PMM looks for similar customers who rated service quality and uses their responses to fill in the gaps. For example, if a missing response came from a customer who ordered the same meal and dined at the same time as others who gave a rating, PMM uses those similar responses to impute a reasonable value. For employee reviews, PMM identifies other employees with similar job roles, performance scores, and tenure to predict the missing responses. Instead of discarding an entire form, it uses observed patterns to fill in what's missing. The result, you retain all your customer feedback, allowing you to spot trends like why evening diners tend to leave lower service ratings than lunch customers. Your employee performance data remains intact, helping you identify that your top chef skipped one question, but still deserves recognition for their outstanding performance. PMM excels when the missing data is MAR, meaning it depends on observed variables. By leveraging patterns in your existing data, PMM provides realistic imputations without introducing significant bias. Comparing the methods, what's the right choice? Listwise, deletion works well for MCAR data. If the missing feedback or responses truly occurred randomly, deleting incomplete entries ensures your analysis isn't biased. However, this approach comes at the cost of reduced sample size and statistical power. Predictive mean matching, PMM, is better suited for MAR data. It uses observed patterns to fill in the blanks, keeping your dataset complete and your analysis robust. In your restaurant scenario, a mix of MCAR and MIR missingness means that PMM is likely the better option for preserving critical insights while minimizing bias. Missing data doesn't have to derail your decision-making process. By understanding the nature of the missingness, whether it's MCAR or MAR, and choosing the right imputation method, you can keep your business running smoothly and make data-driven decisions with confidence. So the next time you encounter incomplete data, don't panic. Analyze, adapt, and impute like a pro. When it comes to handling missing data, not all methods are created equal. Some move like sleek, powerful sports cars, fast, efficient, and ready to take on any challenge. Others, well, let's just say they wobble around like lame ducks, barely making it to the finish line. So buckle up as we take a closer look at three contenders: Listwise deletion, predictive mean matching, PMM, and Poisson imputation. Which one zooms past the competition and which one gets stuck in the slow lane? Let's find out. First, we have Listwise deletion, the classic method that's been around forever. Think of it as an old sedan, reliable, predictable, but not exactly the pinnacle of innovation. Coverage rate. Listwise deletion achieves a solid 95% coverage rate when data is missing completely at random, MCAR. That's impressive for a method that simply deletes incomplete data. But wait, it struggles as soon as the data starts showing patterns of missing at random, MAR. The coverage begins to falter, making it less dependable. Average width. It generates narrow confidence intervals, which is a plus when the missingness is minimal. But as missing data increases, the loss of observations makes it less precise. Bias. At low missingness levels, bias is low. But as more data goes missing, listwise deletion starts to show its cracks. It's like a car that works fine in the city but stalls on the highway. A dependable option in the right conditions, but not ideal for long journeys or large datasets. Next up is predictive mean matching, PMM, the sleek sports car of imputation methods. This baby is all about performance, adaptability, and precision. Coverage rate. PMM maintains over 90% coverage, even when data is MAR. It's like a sports car that hugs the curves of the road, handling complex missingness patterns with ease. Average width. PMM strikes the perfect balance. Confidence intervals are neither too wide nor too narrow. This ensures efficiency without sacrificing accuracy. Bias. At 10% and 30% missingness, PMM is nearly flawless with minimal bias. Even at 50%, it outperforms most other methods. It's like a turbocharged engine, delivering power and control even under challenging conditions. If you want speed, precision, and reliability, PMM is the clear winner. It's built for the modern data world. Finally, we have Poisson imputation, the method that waddles into the competition looking out of place. Coverage rate. Oh no. Poisson imputation consistently fails to cover true values, especially when missingness increases. It's like a car that can't even start in cold weather, completely unreliable, average width. The intervals are wide, vague, and practically useless. Instead of providing insights, Poisson imputation leaves you wondering what went wrong. Bias. Let's just say the bias is off the charts. It struggles to estimate values accurately, making it a dangerous choice for serious analysis. This one's a no-go. It's not even a lame duck. It's a broken-down tricycle. Avoid it at all costs. The final verdict: sports car or lame duck. Listwise, deletion is dependable but limited, perfect for small datasets with MCAR, but don't expect it to handle complex scenarios. It's a sedan, functional, but not exciting. Predictive mean matching, PMM, is the undisputed champion. With low bias, high coverage, and precise intervals, it's the sports car you want in your garage or your dataset. Poisson imputation. Let's leave it behind. It's the lame duck that doesn't belong in this race, so there you have it. Whether you need a workhorse, a precision tool, or just something that won't break down, choose your method wisely. When it comes to data, the difference between a sports car and a lame duck can mean everything. Imagine a detective trying to solve the mystery of missing data in a statistical case. 3 agents are brought in to help solve the case: listwise deletion, predictive mean matching, PMM, and Poisson imputation. Each agent has a unique strategy to uncover the truth hidden in incomplete datasets. Agent listwise deletion takes a clean sweep approach. He removes any data points with missing values, ensuring the remaining evidence is pristine and unbiased. This method keeps things simple and straightforward, but it risks leaving out potentially valuable clues. Despite this, listwise deletion's precision and low bias make him a reliable choice when the missing data truly has no underlying pattern, known as missing completely at random, MCAR. His coverage rate, consistently high at around 95%, speaks to his accuracy in estimating the truth. Agent predictive mean matching, or PMM, adopts a more nuanced strategy. She doesn't discard missing data outright, but instead predicts missing values based on patterns found in the observed data. While PMM's results slightly falter as the missingness increases, she still manages to provide strong parameter estimates and low bias, especially for lower proportions of missing data, e.g. 10% or 30%. However, as the case grows more complex, her predictions might stray slightly from perfection. Finally, agent Poisson imputation, while specialized for count data, struggles in this scenario. Despite his expertise, Poisson's results often underestimate the true values, leading to higher biases and alarmingly low coverage rates. At higher levels of missingness, his methods sometimes fail completely, leaving significant gaps in the solution. In the end, listwise deletion and PMM emerge as the heroes of this data detective story, solving the case efficiently under MCAR conditions. However, Poisson imputation reminds us that even seasoned agents can falter when applied to the wrong context. Together, the investigation highlights the importance of choosing the right strategy based on the nature of the data and the patterns of missingness. The competitors, listwise deletion, predictive mean matching, PMM, and Poisson imputation, are here to show their skills under the missing at random MAR spotlight. Each will tackle missingness proportions of 10%, 30%, and 50%. Let's see how they fared in this statistical showdown. Gold medal, PMM, delivered top-notch results with parameter estimates close to the true value at 10%, 1.001, and 30% missingness, 1.005. At 50%, PMM still performed admirably, 1.08, a solid performance with only minor wobbles. Silver medal. Listwise deletion was neck and neck with PMM at 10%, 1.01, and 30%, 1.03. but kept it slightly too safe at 50%, 1,000. Think of it as that overcautious friend who sticks to the speed limit on an empty highway. Participation trophy. Poisson imputation fell off the track. At 10%, it limped in with an estimate of 0.945. By 30% and 50%, it was out of the race entirely at 0.835 and 0.743. Someone might want to check its engine or its math. PMM demonstrated excellent control, maintaining bias levels of 0.001 and 0.005 at 10% and 30%. Even at 50%, its bias only crept up slightly to 0.08, like a gentle nudge from a corner cone. Listwise, deletion, bias? What bias? It proudly showed a perfect 0 across the board, proving that being boring sometimes pays off. Poisson imputation. Oh dear. The bias numbers 0.070, 0.190, and 0.281 read like a checklist of statistical horrors. It's the kind of performance that makes you question whether Poisson even read the rules. PMM proved it could handle MCAR with poise, maintaining coverage rates of 0.950 at 10%, 0.933 at 30%, and a respectable 0.907 at 50%. Sure, it stumbled a bit at the highest level of missingness, but it stayed in the race. Listwise, deletion. Steady as ever, it clocked coverage rates of 0.949, 0.949, and 0.950. Predictable, reliable, and frankly a little boring, but that's not a bad thing here. Poisson imputation. Coverage rates of 0.002, 0.00, and, brace yourself, 0.0 again. At this point, Poisson isn't even on the track. It's taking a nap under the bleachers. PMM walks away as the overall champion, delivering excellent parameter estimates, low bias, and high coverage rates. It's the method you'd want in your corner for MCAR data. Listwise deletion, though less glamorous, earns the title of most reliable. Perfect for those who prefer a no-frills, safe approach. Poisson imputation. Let's just say it's been disqualified. Maybe it can try again in a scenario with count data where it might actually have a fighting chance. When dealing with MCAR data, it's clear that PMM is the all-rounder with flair, while Listwise deletion is the trusty fallback. Poisson imputation, however, remains the wild card. Use it sparingly and only when you're really sure of what you're doing. If not, you might just find yourself missing more than just your data. Confidence intervals are the unsung heroes of statistical analysis. They whisper, "We're pretty sure the true value lies somewhere in here, but don't hold us to it." Let's explore how different imputation methods performed under the two great mysteries of missingness, MCAR and MCAR. Confidence intervals give us a range of values where we can expect the true parameter coefficient to hide. Think of them as a statistical safety net, except sometimes they have holes. They're not just useful, they're essential for making us look like we know what we're doing. If the true value, denoted as B, is inside the interval, we can breathe easy. If it's not, well, back to the drawing board. Visual representations of confidence intervals make it easier to spot when the true value is safely in the gray. Hooray, or alarmingly in the red. Oops. Missing completely at random, MCAR. Listwise deletion and predictive, mean matching, PMM, put on a stellar show, covering the true value of B in nearly all cases. Coverage rates range from 94.9% at 10% missingness to 95.0% at 50% missingness. Talk about consistency. Meanwhile, Poisson imputation was that one performer who didn't get the memo. Its coverage rates plummeted to 33.4% at just 10% missingness and became a total no-show at higher proportions. Looks like it skipped rehearsal. Missing at random. MCAR. The trends were strikingly similar here. Listwise, deletion and PMM stayed in their comfort zone with coverage rates hovering around 92.8% to 93.9%. Poisson imputation continued its streak of underachievement, struggling to hit a passing grade. You'd think it was trying to avoid covering the true value on purpose. Listwise deletion and PMM are like your reliable coworkers. They get the job done with minimal fuss and deliver results you can trust. Poisson imputation, on the other hand, is that intern who forgot to bring their laptop to work. It might have potential, but its performance leaves much to be desired in these scenarios. Confidence intervals are the lens through which we assess our imputation methods. For MCAR and MAR, listwise deletion and PMM demonstrate why they're the gold standard, ensuring that the true value of B is covered most of the time. As for Poisson imputation, it's clear that the method has confidence issues of its own. So the next time you're grappling with missing data, trust the methods that play it safe. And if you're feeling adventurous, maybe give Poisson imputation a try. Just don't bet the farm on it. All right, let's talk about missing data. A topic that's as thrilling as it sounds. But stick with me here because understanding how to tackle missing data is like choosing the right tool for fixing a leaky faucet. Pick the wrong one and you'll be all wet, literally. So, what's the deal? We're dealing with two main types of missing data, MCAR and MAR. First, missing completely at random, MCAR. Think of it as your data ghosting you for no reason, random and frustrating. But don't worry, listwise deletion steps in like the dependable buddy who says, don't sweat it, we'll just work with what we have. It's simple, effective, and keeps coverage rates around 95%. No drama, no extra work. Now, missing at random, MAR. This one's sneakier. Data goes missing, but there's a pattern. It's like that person who always leaves the party early, but only when their ex shows up. Here, predictive mean matching, PMM, shines. It's like matchmaking for your missing data, pairing it with the most similar cases to make realistic imputations, especially great for moderate missingness, say 10, 30%. So what are your options? Let's break it down. Listwise deletion. The keep it simple method, great for MCAR. But let's be honest, throwing out whole rows of data for a few missing values feels like tossing out a pizza because it's missing one slice. Wasteful, but effective. Predictive. Mean matching, the overachiever. Matches incomplete data with similar cases, giving you realistic results. But it can be a bit bias-prone if missingness goes through the roof. Think of it like a really good barista. You'll get quality most of the time, but don't expect miracles during the morning rush. Poisson imputation, ideal for count data, in theory at least. In practice, let's just say it often poisons your results with bias and wide confidence intervals. A classic overpromiser, underdeliver. When you're staring at your incomplete dataset like it's a jigsaw puzzle with missing pieces, here's what you need to ask yourself. What's the nature of my missing data? Is it MCAR or MAR? This determines whether you should reach for listwise deletion or PMM. How much data is missing? Less missingness. PMM is your friend. Higher missingness? Stick with the reliable listwise deletion. What's the data type? Poisson imputation for count data, but only if you're feeling brave. Choosing an imputation method isn't rocket science, but it's also not a casual dartboard decision. Whether you're sticking to the solid simplicity of listwise deletion, the nuanced matchmaking of PMM, or the niche approach of Poisson imputation, just remember, your method matters. And hey, if all else fails, just don't let your data know you're stressed. They'll only go missing more. All right, let's dive into Poisson imputation, because who doesn't love a method with a name as fancy as it is problematic? Spoiler alert, if you came here hoping for a hero, this method isn't it. Poisson imputation had big dreams. It promised to handle missing count data like a pro, but in reality, it struggled. Picture this. The data was supposed to fit neatly into a Poisson distribution, but instead, the estimates consistently came in lower than the true values. It's like ordering a large coffee and only getting a half-filled cup. Frustrating, right? And it's not just the bias, it also tanked coverage rates across various missingness mechanisms. So now, not only are you getting bad estimates, but you're also left wondering if they're reliable at all. Spoiler, they're not. But wait, there's a twist. A small study of 100 iterations gave Poisson imputation another chance to shine. The data involved dependent variables, and under these specific conditions, things looked a bit better. bias was lower, coverage rates were higher, and it seemed like maybe, just maybe, Poisson imputation had learned its lesson. But let's be real, this improvement wasn't a full redemption arc. It's more like the method barely passed its final exam after failing all the quizzes. Sure, it works better when variables are dependent, but do you really want to bet your analysis on a method with such a shaky track record? Poisson imputation is like that colleague who occasionally gets things right, but usually drops the ball. When your data is perfectly aligned with its assumptions, it might surprise you, but more often than not, you're better off exploring other options unless you enjoy living on the statistical edge. So use it if you must, but maybe keep a backup plan handy and don't say I didn't warn you. Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about choosing an imputation method. It's kind of like picking the right tool for fixing your car. Use a hammer where a wrench is needed and, well, good luck driving anywhere. First up, missing completely at random, or MCAR. This is like your data decided to take a break for no reason. Totally random, no pattern, just chaos. Here, Listwise deletion shines. Why? It keeps things simple and efficient, like a no-nonsense minimalist. Almost 95% coverage, thank you very much. Then there's missing at random, or MAR. This is where the missingness is sneakily related to other variables. Enter predictive mean matching, our trusty detective. It works harder under moderate missingness levels, solving the mystery with impressive realism, because what's the point of imputation if the data doesn't make sense? Listwise deletion, easy to implement and great for MCAR. But if missingness gets high, it's like throwing away pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. You'll end up with half the picture. Predictive mean matching, PMM. More complex, but it's like having a smart assistant who matches missing cases with their best friends. Performs beautifully across the board, even with some chaos. Poisson imputation. Best suited for count data, but let's face it, it often underperforms. Think of it as that one friend who's great at one very specific task, but not much else. So, how do you pick the right method? Start with the nature of your data. Is it MCAR or MAR? That'll tell you if you need listwise deletion or PMM. Next, check the proportion of missingness. Less missingness means PMM might be your best bet. Finally, match your method to your data type. Got count data? Poisson imputation is your guy. Though, as we've learned, don't expect miracles. Choosing an imputation method is all about balance, like cooking. Too much salt? It's ruined. Too little? Bland. With the right method, though, your analysis will hit that sweet spot. So, tread carefully, choose wisely, and remember, data imputation might not be glamorous, but it's the backbone of solid analysis. All right, folks, let's address the elephant in the room, or rather, the tiny elephant. Yes, our study had some limitations, and no, we're not perfect. Let me break it down for you. We had a ticking clock, which meant we couldn't aim for the stars. Instead of analyzing a sprawling data set, we focused on just 4 variables. That's right, 4. Imagine a 4-piece puzzle instead of a 1,000-piece masterpiece. It was efficient, sure, but it did limit how much we could generalize our findings. Hey, sometimes you have to make lemonade with the lemons you've got, right? Now, about that missing data. We only looked at one variable, just one. It's like judging an orchestra based on the oboe section alone. Sure, we got a deep dive, but let's be honest, it doesn't tell the whole story. In the real world, datasets are messy, with missingness dancing across multiple variables, but we had to keep things manageable. So, while our results were precise, they might not fully capture the chaos of real-world data. In the end, our study was a bit like a budget road trip. We covered the basics, stayed focused, and delivered some valuable insights. Could we have done more with unlimited time and resources? Of course, but hey, perfection is overrated. What we've got is a solid foundation, and sometimes that's all you need to get the conversation started. All right, so we've crunched the numbers, tested the methods, and exposed Poisson imputation as the statistical equivalent of a broken GPS. But the journey doesn't end here. There's still more work to be done. So what's next? Let's talk about the future of missing data research and where we go from here. Look, we get it. Our study was small but mighty. We worked with 4 variables and 1 missing data scenario, which is like trying to judge an entire TV show based on a single episode. It gives you an idea, but let's be honest, you need the full season to really know what's going on. Future research? It needs to scale up. More variables, multiple missing data mechanisms, and real-world datasets that don't play nice. We're talking about datasets that look like someone spilled coffee on them, missing values everywhere, complete chaos. That's where the real challenge lies. Simulated data is great. It's clean, predictable, and behaves the way we expect. But real-world data, that's a whole different beast. In actual studies, missing data isn't just random. It's weird, biased, and sometimes outright suspicious. Future research should take these imputation methods out of the lab and into messy, real-world scenarios. Think of hospital patient records with missing test results, business analytics with half-filled surveys, or scientific studies where people forgot to answer the tricky questions. The real world doesn't hand you perfect conditions, so our imputation techniques need to prove themselves in the wild. Right now, we've looked at Listwise deletion, predictive mean matching, PMM, and Poisson imputation with some clear winners and losers. But the field of imputation is evolving. What about machine learning-based imputations? AI-powered methods that don't just estimate missing values but predict them with precision. Could we train a model to fill in gaps so accurately that you wouldn't even know data was ever missing? And let's talk about multiple imputation techniques. Instead of relying on a single guess, these methods create multiple plausible datasets, ensuring that missing data doesn't skew the final analysis. It's like having a second, third, and fourth opinion before making a big decision. Future research needs to dive deeper into these advanced techniques and test their limits. All right, we've finally made it to the end. It's been a journey, hasn't it? We've explored missing data, tested different imputation methods, and along the way we've seen some winners, some losers, and a few statistical train wrecks. But now it's time to wrap things up. So, what did we actually learn? Let's break it down. One of the biggest takeaways? Why data is missing matters just as much as how much is missing. If data disappears randomly, like someone forgetting to fill in a survey question for no reason, MCAR, then simple methods like listwise deletion actually work just fine. But if there's a pattern, like people skipping income-related questions because they don't want to share their salary, MR, you need something smarter, like predictive mean matching, PMM. And then there's Poisson imputation, which, if used incorrectly, is about as helpful as asking a magic 8-ball for research advice. Here's the thing, how you handle missing data directly affects your results. Use the wrong method, and suddenly your entire analysis is built on shaky ground. Let's sum it up. Listwise deletion. Simple, easy, works for MCAR, but also throws out a lot of data. So use it wisely. Predictive mean matching, PMM. The real MVP for MAR data. It keeps things realistic, minimizes bias, and maintains good coverage rates. Poisson imputation. Let's just say, unless you're working with very specific count data, this method should probably stay on the shelf. At the end of the day, using the wrong method can distort your results just as much as the missing data itself. This study gave us some solid insights, but let's be honest, there's a lot more research needed. We tested on a small data set, but in reality, missing data usually affects multiple variables at once. Future research needs to scale up to messier, more complex data sets. We worked in a controlled simulation, but real-world data, that's a different beast. Businesses, healthcare, scientific studies, they all deal with missing data in unpredictable ways. And let's not forget new imputation techniques. AI and machine learning methods could take this to the next level. Who knows? Maybe in a few years, we won't even need to worry about missing data at all. At the end of the day, missing data is not something you can just brush off. If you ignore it, or worse, pick the wrong method, you can end up with skewed results, misleading conclusions, and some very bad decisions. So here's the golden rule. Think before you impute. Look at why the data is missing. Choose the method that fits the situation, not just the easiest one. And when in doubt, avoid Poisson imputation unless you have a very good reason to use it. So that's it. We've broken down missing data, explored the best and worst ways to handle it, and hopefully made it all a little easier to understand. Now, if you've made it this far, congratulations, you officially know more about missing data than most people ever will. Use this knowledge wisely. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button because trust me, there's always more data to talk about. See you next time.